Hello, this is the start of our brand new series of lessons for the fall of 2024, and we start off with a 6-lesson series entitled Thrive, Living on Purpose. And we're starting off with a lesson from Ecclesiastes chapter 1, that a good part of that first chapter, chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. And it can look like a very depressing passage, but it's not. I think it helps us to understand really what really those things are that are important in life. The title of the lesson is Purpose Questioned, as if the writer is writing saying, well, what's the purpose of life anyway? But I don't think that's really what the writer is saying. And I would just mention this before we even begin looking at the passages. People look at this passage and say, well, this is certainly a downer. This is certainly a depressing way to look at life. Christians don't look at life this way. No, we have a more upbeat way of looking at life, a more upbeat purpose from God. Well, yeah, I think we do. I would agree with that. But at the same time, I think most all of us have felt this way before. And to feel this way is not to be unchristian. It's not to be non-Christian. It's just to be a human being. We wonder sometimes what our purpose might be. And sometimes the purposes that the world thinks we should have are not the purposes that are going to last. They're not the meaningful purposes. They're not the godly purposes that we would want to pursue. So let's take a look at this passage. In these first 3 verses, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. The word here for teacher in the Hebrew pronunciation is kohelet, and it means somebody who gathers, somebody who brings people together, assembles them together. That is why it has the English name, at least in our English Bibles, of Ecclesiastes. It was the idea, well, this must be a person who assembles people, brings them together for a worship service. This may also really have a deeper meaning of somebody who assembles wisdom. And again, son of David, king in Jerusalem, Solomon is the supposed author of this. And he was someone that we know was a collector of wisdom who brought all this wisdom and thought together. And so that has more the connotation of, as this translation says, a teacher, than somebody who opens the doors and has people come in and sit down for a worship service. And then notice in verse 2, absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. The word that's there for translated here as absolute futility is the Hebrew word hevel, which basically is Abel's name in the Cain and Abel story. Cain's name comes from a verb that means to get or acquire, but at least a time or two in the Old Testament, the name Cain is used for a spear, something that you would throw to try to impale someone. Abel's name means futility, breath, vapor, early morning fog that blows away, disintegrates by the mid-morning. And so in that story, if someone told us that one of these brothers is going to be a murderer and the other one's going to be a victim, we could probably figure that out from the names. And Abel does kind of live up to his name, doesn't he? He's here for only a brief time. And then he's gone. So it's an interesting refrain for the book, isn't it? Absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. Well, okay, then why live? I mean, this would seem to be an invitation to suicide, but we know that's not what the author has in mind. I mean, if this is Solomon as the author, he never commits suicide. He lives to a ripe old age and enjoys life as the king. And then he goes on to say, what does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun. Now, what does a person gain from all the work that we put in? And if you're thinking that Solomon is the one who writes this, you would think, well, my goodness, you've gained a lot. I mean, you're the king, you have incredible wealth, you have incredible wisdom, you have all these wives and all these children. Look at what you have gained, the fame that you have gained, the power that you have gained. Well, I mean, yeah, you've done some work for it, but gee whiz, look at what you've done. But again, if this is Solomon saying this, then we're thinking, okay, there's something that he's looking at that's more than just fame and fortune and power, because he's gotten all of that. But he's really asking the question, for those individuals, and that's most of us, who work hard and who try to do the best that we can, what do we ultimately gain from that labor? And that, again, that word labor is a good word. It's like the word toil. It indicates hard work. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Now, Solomon recognized the fact that his father was king. His father really completed the conquest of the land of Canaan, so that David was able to rule everything that God had promised Abraham. And then David had a nice long life and a successful life, and then he passed away, and Solomon became the next king, and he's had a nice long and successful life, but he's going to pass away too. And then one of his sons will become king, and he'll pass away, and a generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth just stays forever. And if we're toiling, if we're working, if we're trying to make this impact that will carry our memory on into the future, it doesn't look like we've really done anything, because we really haven't changed the earth. The earth goes on and on and on and on, and the lives we live don't make much of an impact on that. The sun rises and the sun sets, panting. It hurries back to the place where it rises. I mean, the sun comes up, and then it sets again. The next morning it comes back up again. And it's as if the sun is toiling too. It comes up, it sets again, then it rushes back so it can come back and it come up again, and then sets again. Then it rushes back. And it's just this never-ending cycle, over and over and over again. And we need that cycle. No, we depend on that cycle. We want there to be the sun coming out to provide warmth that would grow the crops. We want there to be rain. We want the water cycle to work. All of those things, but it can just seem so monotonous, can't it? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And maybe sometimes life can seem that way too. Yeah, this day was kind of like yesterday, and today's probably going to be, tomorrow's going to be a lot like today. Nothing really changes a whole lot from day to day. And it can just seem so monotonous, as if our life is not adding anything. And so what is my purpose in life? Gusting to the south, turning to the north, turning goes the wind, and the wind returns to its cycles. The wind comes along, and it blows, and it goes to the south, and it goes to the north. And if we watch the weather on the television, we can see how, now we've got a southwesterly wind. Well, now it's a northeastern wind, and it just goes around, and it blows and blows. And it just is always moving, always moving. And it's difficult to predict. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. Well, and that's true, isn't it? And it's amazing. The stream will start up here in the mountains, and it flows on down, and it hits into a creek. Then the creek goes into a river, and the river will flow maybe into another river, but eventually it goes into the sea, into the oceans. And yet there's still water coming down from the mountains. It doesn't dry up. So all this water flows all the way down to the sea. The sea never seems to get any higher, and we never seem to stop having water up here. Well, how does that work? To the place where the streams is what it should say, rather than the streams, where the streams flow, and there they flow again. I mean, the water cycle just continues, doesn't it? And, well, where is this water going? And we probably have a better scientific understanding now than certainly they did. It flows down to the oceans, it evaporates up, not just from the oceans, but from rivers as well, and the wind carries the water back up, and it comes back and it falls as rain, and it keeps things flowing all the time. But it's just this cycle that keeps going and going and going, and we just are amazed by that. All things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. And it's not just all things are monotonous, it's all things are just exhausting, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. No, we're always trying to understand more. Well, maybe if I could just understand this, then I'd have it all figured out. And no, there's always something more. In the speeches that God gives to Job at the end of the book of Job, God asks Job a variety of questions that Job has no answer for. And the people of the Old Testament world, the New Testament world too, didn't have answers for those questions. Some of those questions we have answered now, because we have scientists and biologists, and they've gone and done research, and we understand the answers to those questions. But the more things that we learn, the more there is still yet to learn. And now we have many more questions than we had in the past. So there are always those questions. And if we're always looking, trying to learn. We're always trying to listen and learn. And it feels like we're not going to be satisfied until we know. And Solomon is the great collector of wisdom. I mean, he just kept collecting. Well, I need to know more. I need to learn more. Certainly if I have wisdom, certainly if I know all of this stuff, then I'll have a purpose in life. And I'll know everything, and everything will make sense. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. We can look and say, oh yeah, we've invented all these new things. Yeah, but all of those inventions, really, as we look at this next verse, are kind of based on things that we already know. And we see them in terms of things of what we already know. I mean, the sun keeps working, the water cycle keeps working, the winds keep going where they want to. It just goes around and around, and no matter when you live in time, those things just continue to happen. So, can one say about anything, look, this is new? It's already existed in the ages before us. It was interesting when that very first Star Wars movie came out. And you had the cantina scene where you found all these creatures, especially those folks in the band, and they just did not look very much like humans at all. But when you looked at them, well, some of them had trunks. We know trunks from elephants. They had eyes, different kinds of eyes, but we know those from humans and reptiles and animals. And they may have had different kinds of fingers. Maybe it would have had tentacles. But we know those from octopi and from other creatures. I mean, it's very much what Ecclesiastes is saying here. Okay, well, this is something new. Well, yeah, but we've seen that kind of thing before. Even with the animal, the platypus. Well, it seems really weird, but we have seen egg-laying creatures before. We have seen furry creatures before. We have seen creatures with duck-type bills. We have seen creatures with webbed feet. And so, if somebody says, oh, well, this is new, well, yeah, maybe it's a little bit new as far as the way things are connected and put together, but it's the same kind of stuff that we've seen, put together in a new way, but it's really nothing new. It's just kind of a same old world, isn't it? There is no remembrance of those who came before, and of those who will come after, there will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. And this is something that we realize, don't we? I mean, there are some people in world history that we remember, and Solomon is one for those who are people of faith in God. We remember the name Solomon. Even those who are not people of faith in God, keep in mind Solomon as a great wise person and a fountain of wisdom and knowledge. But not many people reach that kind of remembrance. I think about, I remember my dad, and I remember my grandfathers. I certainly know something about my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. And my mother put together a really good genealogy of the family that I'm looking through and trying to do some research on that. But I didn't really know those people. And, I'm not sure that my children are going to be interested in kind of keeping those records going. And as time passes by, as generations pass by, I'm going to get lost in the sands of this family too. I mean, that just happens, doesn't it? When I was teaching the book of Ecclesiastes to students at University of the Cumberlands, I would read this verse and I would mention the fact that, after I retire from the University of the Cumberlands, it only takes 4 years, and there's not a student on campus who knows who you are. And they'll go, oh, no, they'll remember you, Dr. Bob. No, they won't. No. There'll be a lot of students who come after me that never know what I was. And once close family to me passes away, my memory kind of fades too. And so, that's just the reality of the way things go. And we may look at it and go, well, that's certainly depressing, but that's just what happens, isn't it? There's not a lot of remembrance of all of us for a long, long time after we have passed away. I, the teacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. This is what is an interesting verse, because it's have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. And it's possible to understand that as, well, I used to be king, but I'm not king anymore, which is the reason why some people wonder whether Solomon actually wrote this book or not. When he would have written this, because we know that Solomon was king until the day he died. After his father David died and he became king, well, he stayed king until he died. But what he's mentioning is, I've been the king. I've been one of those folks who should be remembered. I applied my mind to examine and explore through wisdom, and he certainly had more opportunity than most people did. He said, and I really tried hard. I examined it. I explored it. I was careful in doing that research. All that is done under heaven. God has given people this miserable task to keep them occupied. And we close out. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun, and have found everything to be futile, a pursuit of the wind. When we hear about people trying to catch the wind, well, you can't really do that. You can't catch it in a jar, put a top on it very quickly, and then later on open it up and feel the wind. That just doesn't work. And so this is just an exhausting occupation. You try to keep learning, trying to keep seeing things and hearing things and understanding everything, and you try the best you can, but the world just goes on and on and on, as if we didn't matter, as if our life was futile, as if our life was empty. Now, again, from a Christian standpoint, we go, oh, this is just terrible. We hope that life is more meaningful than this. And it is, and we know that. But meaning is not found in how much stuff we can accumulate. And Solomon is trying to let us know that. Yeah, I've got power. So what? Now, once I've passed away, that power goes to someone else who might use it well, who might not use it well at all. And we find proverbs like that in the book of Proverbs. And yes, I have wealth, and when I pass away, I leave it to someone who may squander everything. And so what did all my toil do but to give it to someone who would waste it away and not use it well? And yes, I have fame, but what good does that do once I'm gone? Does it help other people, or do they just remember my name in conjunction with wisdom, and that's it? Now, what we really have to understand and have to realize is the purpose that we have is not to be wealthy, it's not to be famous, it's not to have power. Our purpose is to serve God and to serve others. Our purpose is to love God and to love others. And if our life goes through and the whole world, the whole planet has not changed, that's okay. No, our purpose has been to bless those who are around us, to bless them in the name of God, to share our faith and live our faith with others. That's the purpose that we have. And as we look through these coming lessons, we're going to end up seeing that. Now, we'll talk about the fruit of the Spirit. Now, that's what our life should be showing. And Solomon realizes that even as the king, that he had all kinds of wealth, could do pretty much anything he wanted to do, and yet nothing was ultimately satisfying. What is satisfying is serving God. What is satisfying is having a relationship with Him. What is satisfying is helping and serving others in His name. And we can all do that, whether we have wealth or not, power or not, fame or not. We can do those kinds of things. We can make a difference. Let's join together in prayer. Father, some days we can certainly agree with this first chapter of Ecclesiastes. It just seems that things are monotonous, things never change. And we wonder, well, okay, what's the purpose in life? The purpose of life is to have a relationship with you that leads us to love you and love others, serve you and serve others, and be a blessing in your name. We don't want power, we don't want wealth, we don't want fame. We want you, and we want to live a life that focuses on serving you. Father, help us to do that. Help us to see that as our purpose. Even in a world which does not change very much, even in a world where we may be forgotten someday, you won't forget us. And we are so thankful for that. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.